Now, to work with SQL, we need a SQL-based database. And I'll go for MySql because you can install and use that for free. At least in the basic version, which does suffice for this course. You can visit mysql.com to download and install it. And there, simply click on Downloads. And scroll down. We don't need the Enterprise Edition here. Instead, we'll go for the Community Edition, which is the free one. Click on Downloads there too. And now what we will need is the MySql Community Server, and we'll also need the Workbench. Now, you can also download a combined installer. Especially here for Windows, you should choose the MySql on Windows installer and tools, which allows you to set up everything in one go. But you can also click on MySql Community Server here simply. And this should give you a download which allows you to install all these things in one go anyways. So let's choose the MySql Community Server here. Always dive into the installation instructions in case you're facing any problems on your system. And then if you scroll down, select your operating system here, the one you plan on using. So for Windows, you can then also download this general installer, which allows you to pick the programs you need. For Mac OS, we simply can go for this first download, the DMG archive. And once you click there, you don't have to log in. You can simply choose no thanks, just start my download to, well, start the download. Now, this can take a while because it's quite a big file. On Windows, you have the choice between downloading a web-based installer, which is smaller but downloads what you need during the installation, or a complete installer, which downloads everything in advance. Once your download is done, simply execute the downloaded file, so the Windows installer or this Mac DMG archive. Here I'm asked to continue through the installation wizard, and I will do that. Agree to the license, leave the default installation path. Click on Customize here, though, to choose what to install and make sure that you do install the MySql server here. If you're running this installer on Windows, you should have a different installer where you can choose to install the MySql server, but then also in one go install the MySql Workbench. So make sure you select both for installation and click Install here. And now on both operating systems, this should install it. Now, once the installation is done, a configuration process should start automatically. There, you should make sure that during this configuration process, you do choose the legacy password encryption, which sounds insecure, but which is perfectly fine, and the newer version simply is not supported by the NodeSQL package we're using yet. So choose the legacy password encryption and choose Next. You also have to choose a password for your root user. And you can also leave Start MySQL Server once installation is complete checked, or check it if it is unchecked, and click Finish. On Windows, simply leave all the other settings as they are and click through them. And by the end, it should be done, and it should then also start a MySql server for you with the setup you chose here in the configuration steps. Now, once installation is complete, on Windows, if you also installed the MySql Workbench, you're done. On Mac or Linux, you're not done yet. Instead, you should go back to a previous page where you chose MySql Community Server, and there also install the MySql Workbench. The Workbench basically is a client, a visual client we can use to connect to our database to inspect it and play around with it outside of our Node application, which simply makes debugging and developing a bit easier. So choose the MySql Workbench here, and there you also can choose your operating system. Now again, on Windows, if you used that general installer, you already have it. Download that file here. Again, you don't need to log in, just start the download and wait for the download to finish so that you can again execute the, executable once it is done. Finish the installation process as instructed by the installer. And once you're done with that, you should be all good. You can now test your setup by starting the MySql Workbench you just installed And then there, you should already see your MySQL instance running. If that is not the case, have a look at the attached document where I describe some common issues, or in general give you some links on how to make this work and how to bring this up. You just need to make sure that your MySQL server is running, and during installation you had a choice to check that it should always start with your system. On Mac, you can also open your system preferences, and there you should have the MySQL option where you can also stop and start the server. To connect to the database, simply click on that instance and now enter that root password you assigned during the installation. This should now allow you to connect to your SQL server instance like this. Now, once you enter the password, you should be connected to your database system. And right now, this is what you have, basically an empty window. And we won't work too much in that. We'll, of course, work with our database from inside our Node application. But this will allow us to conveniently look into our database from time to time and see what is stored. And one thing we can do already is we can go down to schemas here, which can be translated with database here, you could say. And there we can define a new schema, so a new database with which we'll work. And I'll name it Node Complete. You can name this whatever you want. And you can also leave the other settings here. And then on the bottom right, and I know it's small here, unfortunately, you can't zoom in, you can click Apply. Now, this will create a new database, you can say, with which we can interact later. You can leave all the default settings and simply click Apply here. And now you should see that Node Complete thing, which has a couple of tables, or none right now, but where you can then later connect to and store your data in the tables that will be created here. So with that, we can continue, and we can now move on with our code and start interacting with MySQL from inside our Node application.